Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Jay Cohn. The four Republican candidates hoping to challenge U.S. Senator Jon Tester this fall tonight faced off against each other.
The 90-minute debate played out in Helena just 2 weeks before absentee ballots get mailed out to voters.
The four GOP hopefuls are trying to separate themselves from the pack and make inroads with voters who are nearing decision time. Tonight's debate at the Montana Historical Society featured a wide range of topics, spanning from health care to U.S. foreign policy to this week's controversy over Veterans Affairs Secretary nominee Ronnie Jackson and Montana Senator Jon Tester's role in Jackson's withdrawal.
It's a due process situation. It's not impugning somebody's character. It's not prejudging them. It's not calling them pejorative names like Candyman. It's bringing them into the committee room and asking tough questions. That absolutely has to happen, but it needs to happen in the courtroom or the committee room and not in the press.
In this situation, I think what should have happened is Tester should not have bullied Dr. Jackson. He should have waited for the process.
Ronnie Jackson, who was brought forward and the nomination was brought forward, and he had served 3 other administrations, and then we had information that was brought out that basically had not been verified, had not been clarified before we were able to go through a hearing process.
Unfortunately, I think this is what's become politics as usual. This is what happens when we start sending just bickering career politicians that start using unsubstantiated name-calling to bring somebody down, to create political change without anybody even, like I said before, standing up and being counted.
More coverage of tonight's Senate showdown tomorrow on Q2's Montana This Morning.
And next week, the focus will shift to Montana's U.S. House race. That's where 5 Democratic challengers will square off in their own debate.
President Trump, as you saw, calling out Montana Senator Jon Tester today as he vented frustration on a slew of topics.
From his failed pick to run the VA to the cloud still hanging over the White House, CNN's Pamela Brown reports.
President Trump today defending his pick to run the Department of Veterans Affairs.
He's a great man, and he got treated very, very unfairly. He got treated really unfairly, and he's a hell of a man, too.
He's not taking any questions. Thank you, guys.
Dr. Ronnie Jackson withdrew his name from the nomination process today amid allegations ranging from drunken behavior on the job to mishandling prescription drugs. Jackson saying in a statement, "The allegations against me are completely false and fabricated. If they had any merit, I would not have been selected, promoted, and entrusted to serve in such a sensitive and important role as physician to 3 presidents over the past 12 years. After Senator Jon Tester, the ranking member on the Veterans Affairs Committee, detailed the allegations against Jackson to the media, the president threatened his political future.
I think Jon Tester has to have a big price to pay in Montana, because I don't think people in Montana, the Admiral is the kind of person that they respect and admire, and they don't like seeing what's happened.
Trump also critical of FBI Director James Comey in the wide-ranging phone interview today.
Did a great thing for the American people by firing him. Well, I love the FBI. The FBI loves me. But the top people in the FBI, headed by Comey, were crooked.
The president also had ominous words for his own Justice Department.
And our Justice Department, which I try and stay away from, but at some point I won't. Our Justice Department should be looking at that kind of stuff, not the nonsense of collusion with Russia. There is no collusion with me and Russia, and everyone knows it.
But today, members of the president's own party again warned him from doing anything to interfere with the special counsel's Russia investigation.
The president will do what he wants to do, I think, and I just hope that he doesn't want to do this.
I think it would be ill-advised.
He's got to be very careful. I mean, that's a serious thing to do that, and he better make sure that he knows what he's doing.
The president today also wading into the Stormy Daniels case, saying for the first time his attorney, Michael Cohen, is representing him in the matter.
As a percentage of my overall legal work, a tiny, tiny little fraction. But Michael would represent me and represent me on some things. He represents me like with this crazy Stormy Daniels deal. He represented me, and, from what I see, he did absolutely nothing wrong.
Well, a little bit of Washington is coming to Billings tomorrow. U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions will stop in the Magic City to draw attention to the nation's growing drug crisis. The Attorney General will meet with community leaders, local law enforcement, along with healthcare professionals who deal every day with treatment and prevention of drug abuse. Montana U.S. Attorney Kurt Alme says Sessions' trip here to Billings comes at a time when drug use, specifically opioids and meth, are at an all-time high.
It's here and it's growing. We have over 100 overdose deaths every year in Montana. I think in 2015 we learned that almost 20% of high school juniors and seniors had tried a prescription painkiller that wasn't prescribed to them. And those are the pills that are prescribed. Then we also have drug trafficking organizations that are bringing things like heroin, fentanyl into the state. We saw a tripling of arrests related to heroin between 2014 and 2016.
In fact, the latest numbers regarding overdose deaths in Montana speak for themselves. Drug overdose is now the third leading cause of injury-related death in the state. Since 2000, the rate of prescription drug overdose deaths has doubled, with more than 700 deaths from prescription opioid overdoses alone. Attorney General Sessions expected to speak here tomorrow for about a half an hour. It's an invitation-only group at the Rimrock Foundation Conference Room. It all starts at 1:15. We'll, of course, will have full coverage for you tomorrow night here on the Q2 5:30 News.
An historic moment on the Korean border today. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in shook hands as each stood on either side of the military demarcation line that separates the two countries. Then, in a symbolic move, Moon briefly joined Kim on the northern side of the line before both leaders stepped over into the southern side.
The two leaders are holding a summit Friday in the Peace House, which is located on the southern side of the Korean demilitarized zone. South Korea says the summit will likely focus on denuclearization and improving relations between the two Koreas.
Bill Cosby could spend his final years in prison. The man once known as America's Dad found guilty today for crimes committed 14 years ago. A Pennsylvania jury convicted Cosby on 3 felony counts for drugging and molesting former Temple University employee Andrea Constant at his mansion in 2004. Other Cosby accusers sobbed when the verdict was read. One of them saying, quote, "I feel like women's lives matter, that modern culture now is actually being mirrored by the justice system." 80-year-old Cosby faces up to 30 years in prison. His attorneys plan to appeal.
Switching gears to the weather front tonight, Bob McGuire, we're all excited about all this nice weather coming our way this weekend, but it's not all going to be sunshine.
No, we could see some sprinkles rolling in here. Let me show you what's going to happen. We start out in the Pacific Ocean. That low pressure cell, it's a big low pressure cell that'll continue to march its way into the region, bringing with it a chance for rain and snow showers. But let me show you how this thing's going to work out. By 10 o'clock on Friday night, you'll notice the moisture starts moving onshore tomorrow night. Then by Saturday at 10 o'clock, now it's starting to make its way in towards Montana. That's the area in white there. That's all the moisture moving in. Then by the time Saturday night into Sunday gets here, that stuff starts making its way into the Billings area, looking for scattered showers and things like that. Then the whole thing kicks out of here by the time next week gets here. So how much precipitation are we talking about? Well, here's what the computer models are saying. Here in the Billings area, not a lot, maybe about 1/3 of an inch. But look at that over by Missoula, over an inch. Same thing near an inch at Cutbank and also by Kalispell. Heavy rain out there probably will add to some of the flooding in that area as well. We'll have your local forecast in a few more minutes.
All right, thanks, Bob.
Montana and Wyoming, of course, well known for agriculture. Now a new method of farming happening in Jackson Hole is one of the first of its kind in the world.
Q2's Asia Gore is on special assignment tonight to show us the technique and social mission that makes vertical harvest thrive.
Jackson's really a food town. It has become more and more recognized for its restaurants, and people really care about the food that they eat.
Before it was diced, sautéed, or roasted, produce typically spent hours in the back of a semi on the way to Jackson. But now, Vertical Harvest is bringing farm fresh to downtown using a method called hydroponic farming.
And it means that you feed the plant through water, so we don't need any soil in the greenhouse. So basically we just have a growing medium that holds the roots for the plants and is basically a delivery device for the nutrients.
Each of the 3 floors has a different microclimate, allowing a variety of produce, from tomatoes to microgreens, to thrive year-round.
If we have a hailstorm outside, if it's blowing down with snow, our plants are kind of smugly watching from their high-rise apartments. So there's a lot of benefits to growing indoors.
Out in Jackson today, the weather is a cool 34 degrees. But up here on the 3rd floor of Vertical Harvest, they're growing tomato plants. And in just a few weeks' time, these tomatoes will be served on plates down in the restaurants in Jackson.
When you go out and you see some of your produce on a gorgeous plate and you see other people enjoying it and commenting about the quality of the produce, it's incredibly rewarding.
It's a feeling shared not only by the company's 3 female co-owners, but their 15 employees who now have an opportunity like never before.
I help harvest tomatoes and I do microgreens in the afternoon.
John Feifels, like most of his co-workers, has a developmental disability, something that limited his employment options for years.
I used to work at the Elk Country Inn. I had to fold laundry and carry bags of dirty laundry.
But here at Vertical Harvest, Feifels and Sean Stone find purpose.
It's a great job, it's good for the environment, and it's healthy for people that buys this stuff from us.
It's really shifted the perception of what this population is able to do. And I think that story brings people to Vertical Harvest first, and then they keep coming back because of the quality of the produce.
And the quantity, 10 acres worth of fruit, vegetables, and herbs grown on 1/10 of an acre, making Vertical Harvest a massive year-round producer. While the idea clearly works today, skeptics had their doubts.
It's a pretty far out thing to say to someone, right? We're going to grow this 3-story high greenhouse in Jackson, Wyoming, when it's -20 outside, and we're going to employ all these different growing methods that have never been done before, and we're going to employ people with disabilities to run it. And people might be inclined to think that that's a little bit much, you know, to bite off. And it's been incredible. I think anyone with doubts has not only become a believer, but become an advocate.
It's a system of support the team at Vertical Harvest hopes to achieve in the 5 other communities they've pegged for future development.
It's all about pairing innovation with an underserved community. And in Jackson, that's been employing people with disabilities, but in other towns we go to, that might be employing veterans or ex-felons or the homeless population. So we're excited to go and do good elsewhere.
In Jackson, I'm Asia Gore, MTN News.
Thank you very much, Asia. Great story there. And by the way, Asia tells us Vertical Harvest, in fact, does schedule tours. So if you're in the Jackson area, there's an opportunity to check it out for yourself.
Coming up on tonight's 10 o'clock news, autism numbers are on the rise, but is it due to external influence or just more diagnosis? We will take a closer look.
And in sports, former Wyoming quarterback Josh Allen drafted tonight inside the top 10. Scott tells us what number, and we'll hear from him as well.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana.